Hello, good morning or afternoon, everyone. If you are watching this video, you most probably have attended our recent webinar, April 14, 2020. This video is created in order to provide you a short recap of what we have discussed. The title of the webinar is Emotional Intelligence, Resiliency During Emergency, and it's made specifically for millennials. My name is Paul Legaspi, and I work in Emovation. I work as a sales consultant and a facilitator. In Emovation, we focus on people, on how they can use their emotions for themselves in order to provide greater contribution for the organization they are working for. So let's start the presentation. So here's the overview of what happened in the recent webinar. We discussed firstly the science of emotions, why we feel what we feel, and what happens when we feel these emotions. Second, the two competencies we will tackle in order to become a more resilient person for these trying times are these two competencies: self-awareness and self-management, especially with the extension of the enhanced community quarantine. Thirdly, we will discuss 4 practical strategies in relieving stress during this period. And lastly, I would like to give an encouragement on how we can treat this period as an opportunity to be more intentional. So to start it off in our first point, the science of our emotions. Ultimately, our emotions come from the brain, specifically in the amygdala. It produces the emotions that we feel on a regular basis, and sometimes unconsciously, it produces so many emotions. If I give you a list of emotions and you went about thinking what you felt yesterday, I'm quite sure you will write down a lot. So contrary to popular TV shows, emotions does not come from the heart. While yes, our emotions can affect our hearts or our physiology, they are not the factory of our emotions. A clear example for this is when you feel angry. Your heart beats faster, and this in turn shows your breathing pattern, which in this example, you will have a hard time breathing properly. So in this sense, you see that our emotions do also affect our physiology and our health. Along with this, our brain has a system in how we feel, think, do when an event happens. To prove a point, now that is not a real cockroach, okay? It's just a PNG image. But supposing it is real and this cockroach decided that it wanted to be a butterfly for today and to show you how magnificently it flaps its black wings, what happens within you? Emotions. See, this event causes you to feel emotions first. So when there's a stimuli or an event, it comes through the process of our emotional brain first. And in this example, we would see that this cockroach is a threat. And when you are in threat, decisions come in. Decisions come in. After that emotional process, then comes the thinking brain. So if you are brave, courageous, or heroic, what you will do naturally is to grab a slipper and kill the cockroach. But if you are for example, by nature afraid of cockroach, what you will do is to leave that place as soon as possible. If it's in a room, you leave that room, close it, the door, and never go back again until someone kills the cockroach for you. So this is the example, and I'm quite sure, kidding aside, I'm quite sure we can all relate. And a closer look to it, you will realize that those events didn't happen for 5 minutes. The feeling you felt, the decision you made, all happened within a matter of seconds. That's the normal process of our brains when events occur. In our second point, we will discuss the 2 key competencies that we need in order to be more resilient in these very trying times. So these 2 key competencies are self-awareness and self-management. Now, if you would ask me, how come we don't head straight to self-management, knowing it is the practical answer to our concerns? on becoming more resilient, on managing ourselves, it's simply because you cannot manage yourself unless you have an idea what needs managing within you. Here, we won't just help you manage yourselves, we also would like to help you become more self aware so that you will be the one to gather data on how you would manage your own functions. That's why Gretchen Rubin says self awareness is the key to self mastery. If you really want to have any noticeable behavior change, you have to start off with self awareness. You cannot change behaviors unless you know what behaviors need to be changed. And that only comes when you have self awareness, if you are practicing self awareness. Now, in order to help you become more self aware and to practice self management, we will discuss strategies, which perhaps most of you are already doing. And what we just do here is simply encourage you. That is from Dr. Ben Palmer. These are the 4 practical strategies in relieving stress during this period. First is the thinking strategies. When we say thinking strategies, these are thinking things out before acting on an impulse. Again, it goes back to self-awareness. And in order to have self-management, instead of rushing through decisions, you can ask yourself self-reflecting questions that will help you know what the underlying motivation is when you do a specific task. Example questions would be, why am I hot-tempered towards my family? Why do I easily get irritated with this person? Why do I feel this emotion whenever I am in this situation? Another thing that works for me personally in thinking strategies is meditation and prayer. For me, I specifically set a time of prayer with God. It is a time where I can just talk to Him and feel His presence. In that moment, I am at peace, which we all need, especially in these chaotic times, don't we? Another would be physiological strategies. This includes regular and consistent exercise. We have enormous amounts of reliable information that exercise leads us to our healthier life. It helps us think better, feel better, and from that, do better. Therefore, having consistent regular exercise helps us remain more resilient. If you yourself have tried this, you can say this is true, right? After exercising consistently, your sleep feels better and you feel better even after you wake up. Another strategy would be the relationship strategies. We have been reminded then and again, if you've attended our webinars, that we are not exactly going through social distancing. Instead, we like to call it physical distancing. During the webinar, we were able to interact and socialize with one another. We have 3 activities when we did this webinar. And the only difference with the trainings we conducted before the quarantine period is that we are physically present. But now, and during that webinar, we are all virtually present. We did not sacrifice socializing with one another. You have your families or your dorm mates with you, perhaps friends who live with you. And what you all have in common is luxury of time. Perhaps it's time to spend time with one another, build meaningful relationships with one another. We need to keep socializing with people whom we have the opportunity to do so. Along with this, we have another and last strategy, which is the environment strategies. It's the best time to organize your surroundings. You see our workstation, what's inside our cabinets, and how we want our surroundings to be tells a lot about us. If we take being organized seriously, it tells us that we practice self-management. To share a method in how we can practice this environment strategies, let me share how the Japanese practice 5S methodology. Those are 5 words that start with letter S. First, sort. Second, set in order. Third, shine. Fourth, standardize. And fifth, sustain. Sustain. I think, in my own opinion, Japan is a successful and prosperous country, not only because they have 4 seasons in a year, but because they are individually self-managed and well-disciplined. In our cases, whenever we work, especially for us, for those who work from home, it's best to make sure that the stuff lying on our tables are organized and well displayed. Sometimes it is actually stressful to see something is organized, and that would lower your chances on becoming more resilient. See, the aesthetics matter. The aesthetics matter because they show a glimpse of who we really are. Lastly, treating this period as an opportunity to be more intentional. Now, we would like to mention each and every one of you for keeping up with our webinars. This is a great start for you. See, learning comes first with knowing, but learning effectively comes when you do what you have been taught. That's why we must translate our knowledge of the 4 practical strategies to doing with our hands, with our feet, with our mouth, in order to learn it in the most effective manner. How do we do this? We simply use the 4 strategies. How can we be intentional in using those 4 strategies? Well, to give you an encouragement, I have given a list in this. And in the thinking strategies, it's time to set a consistent schedule where you can intently look at yourself and analyze your behaviors. Intentionally pray. Set time for God. Meditate on who He is and how He can work in us in these trying times. The physiological strategies consists of setting a specific time for exercise and be willing to persevere in it. I believe in the saying, and this applies well mostly for physiological strategies, that when there's no pain, there's no gain. For those of you who have not yet experienced exercise or have done exercise, when you first do it, I'm sure probably for a whole week, your body will ache. But after persevering through that consistent exercise, you would feel better. And from that, you can be more resilient. Another thing in relationship strategies is perhaps it's time to ask forgiveness from someone you may have offended. Start building meaningful conversations with your friends virtually. For me specifically, I set Friday, specifically 7:30 strictly. I attend our singles ministry, and from there I have a group of men who I will be talking to from person to person. And we have the rule there that we cannot share what is being shared there. It means being confidential in that scenario. And having that, it somewhat gives me that release of stress, knowing that someone cares for me, asking how I am, and that just helps. Now, in environment strategies, declutter. If you don't need it, declutter. The more space you have, the better. And lastly, in environment strategies as well, you may want to start practicing 5S methodology. You have the luxury of time to do all these things. Make sure that everything goes where it should be. Example would be placing all items in one clutter alone. So that would be simply organizing it, having to practice 5S, sorting it. Finally, so we've been learning a lot with these free webinars. These webinars tackle the general idea of emotional intelligence. If you think this has helped you and will also be able to help others, we also conduct customized webinars tailored suited for your needs. If this has touched you individually, feel free to connect us with your with authority to allow us to train your own organizations. Specifically, probably it's your HR admin or HR personnel. So we've discussed this in recap form, and I'm quite sure this pandemic will be over someday. While we may be living under the new normal, we will soon adjust to this phase. So I would like to also end this with a question to challenge each and every one of us in these trying times. You could ask yourself this question. Once the pandemic is done, have I developed meaningful habits that could contribute to myself and others? Or would you be left saying, I could have done better? Thank you for staying with me for the rest of the webinar. I am blessed to partake in this session, and I would love to hear more about. Feel free to contact us at care@emovation.ph if you have more questions. We will be of good service to health. Above all else, to God be all the glory. God bless everyone.